Hey guys, tonight we drift into golden waters and ancient silence, right into the sleepy story of Queen Nefertiti. You're gliding softly on the surface of the Nile, where the air smells faintly of warm silt and crushed lotus, and the setting sun paints the world in melted honey. The sky blushes with burnt orange, and every ripple reflects some forgotten prayer or half-remembered legend. We're heading back, way back, to the 14th century BCE, to a time when gods could be jealous, pharaohs wore eyeliner, and queens could shake empires with a single, well-timed smile. Our boat creaks gently, swaying with the hush of evening winds, and the only sounds are the soft splash of your oar and the distant call of a hoopoe bird, flitting through papyrus reeds. You probably won't survive this, not because anything dangerous will happen, but because this ride is so soothing, you'll be asleep before the queen even makes her entrance. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're all tuning in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The boat drifts lazily toward the eastern bank, where the sun always rises. That was a sacred direction in ancient Egypt. East meant life, rebirth, promise. And it's the perfect way to begin our tale, because where the river bends and slows, a city rises from the dust like a dream. Akhenaten. You don't need to remember that name, though. You'll probably forget it before you blink. But just know it means the horizon of the Aten. Sounds poetic, right? That's because it was. A place built entirely for one god, one sun, one light, and one queen who glowed like it. As the boat glides past limestone steps and columns carved with sun discs, you step ashore. The stones are still warm from the day's heat, and when your feet touch them, it's like walking across the skin of a sleeping lion. The air hums with that end-of-day stillness, when even the scarabs have stopped clicking and the Nile crocodiles yawn lazily in the reeds. Ahead of you rises a gate, not the kind with spiked iron or angry guards. This is more symbolic. Two pillars standing tall like outstretched arms welcoming the sun. Or maybe just you. You pass through them, brushing fingers along the hieroglyphs. There's Nefertiti's name, etched next to the pharaohs, her husband, Akhenaten. But sometimes, curiously, her name stands alone, just hers. That's not normal for the time, and that quiet little anomaly will haunt Egyptologists thousands of years later. You wander deeper into the city. The sandstone glows gold and pink under the fading light, and everything feels somehow soft, even the sharp angles of statues and temple roofs. This place isn't old and crumbling yet. It's brand new. Fresh paint still clings to the walls, vivid reds, deep blues, sunflower yellows. You pass a mural of the royal family, Nefertiti with 6 daughters, all of them cradled by the sun's hands, literal sun rays ending in tiny fingers. It's strange and sacred and oddly intimate, like a family photo etched into stone. A mainstream fact slides gently into your sleepy thoughts. Nefertiti wasn't just any queen. She co-ruled Egypt during one of its most controversial religious revolutions. Akhenaten and Nefertiti pushed aside the old gods, the whole crowded pantheon, and made Aten, the sun disk, the one true god. Imagine tossing out every belief system you've ever known and saying, "Nah, just the sun, thanks." That's what they did, together, as equals, and that wasn't normal. But here's a quirkier fact that almost feels made up. Nefertiti's name means the beautiful one has come, like she just arrived one day. Bam, instant icon. And honestly, based on what's left of her, statues, paintings, that famously perfect limestone bust, it's not hard to imagine a teenage pharaoh seeing her and going, "Yep, that one, that's the queen." Historians still argue whether Nefertiti was born of royal blood or rose from obscurity. Some say she was a foreign princess. Others claim she was the daughter of a high priest. Or maybe she was both, or neither. Records are suspiciously vague, as if ancient scribes couldn't decide whether to make her a goddess or a ghost. But tonight, none of that matters, because she's real here, just ahead, bathed in dusk. You follow the fading light past quiet colonnades and lotus-shaped columns, their shadows stretching long and soft across mosaic floors. The city around you is quiet, not from emptiness, but reverence. This was a holy city after all, built from scratch, in the middle of the desert, just to worship one god under one sky. And yet it's not intimidating. Not at all. It's tender, like a lullaby in stone. You pass a small shrine, its door open, flickering with oil lamplight. Inside, a statue of Nefertiti stands, not towering, not grand, just still and poised. Her crown, the iconic flat-topped blue one, catches the last orange streak of daylight like it's lit from within. Her face is calm, eyes elongated, lips parted just slightly, as if she's about to tell you something and forgot mid-sentence. Outside the shrine, a cat stretches across the path, its back arching like a bow. You pause to pet it. Why not? You're dreaming, probably. Or you're not. Either way, the cat blinks slowly, approves of your presence, and slinks away into the deepening dusk. You continue your wanderings, the sky overhead shifting into deeper hues. Lavender, indigo, navy. Stars begin to flicker, sharp and cold above the warm breath of the city. Somewhere, a soft reed flute begins to play. Just a few notes, distant and sleepy. This is the world Nefertiti ruled. Not just walked through, ruled. With poise, with power, and with that unnerving, Mona Lisa smile that made her unforgettable. Tonight, you'll walk beside her. Watch her rise, linger through her golden days and fade, mysteriously, into legend. She won't speak to you directly. She rarely did. But you'll feel her presence, like warm wind brushing your cheek, like sunlight through closed eyes. And so, as the Nile behind you whispers to the shore, and the breeze shifts through palm trees with a sigh, you step deeper into her world, into her silence, into her story. The palace doesn't announce itself with trumpets or towering spires. It just unfolds before you, low and wide, built from the same sun-kissed limestone as the city, blending into the earth like it grew there. You step through an archway where vines coil lazily around columns and the scent of myrrh hangs in the still air. There are no guards shouting, no officials rushing, just a kind of stillness that feels like it belongs to someone important, someone used to being watched in quiet reverence. You pass a wall relief of Nefertiti standing with her daughters under the Aten's rays. Those fingers of light again, each one ending in a tiny ankh, the symbol of life, as if the sun itself is spoon-feeding vitality into her hands. It's intimate, personal, almost eerie, but beautiful too. Inside, the light shifts, not just darker, cooler, diffused through alabaster windows that catch the sun and stretch it thin, like honey on silk. The floors are polished and quiet under your steps. A breeze flutters through open doors, rustling papyrus scrolls and silk curtains in a kind of soft conversation. The walls are painted with scenes not of battle or conquest, but family breakfasts, children dancing, and priests shielding their eyes from the sun. You've entered a palace designed not to intimidate, but to soothe. A servant girl drifts past with a tray of pomegranate seeds and chilled beer in ceramic jugs. She doesn't look surprised to see you. Maybe she thinks you're a minor deity. Maybe you are. You move through a garden that doesn't smell like royalty. It smells like life. Heliotrope, tamarisk, frankincense. A pond glistens in the center, its surface dotted with white lotus blooms and lazy fish. In the corner, a stone bench waits under a fig tree, where shadows sway like lullabies. This was Nefertiti's space, where she walked barefoot, possibly humming, definitely thinking, where she made decisions that shaped religion and policy and whispered arguments behind fans. There's something both human and unreal about her surroundings, like you're in the dream of someone who remembered every detail vividly. Sunlight lingers on the carvings, Even the bugs here seem polite. Mainstream historical fact time. The city of Akhetaten, later called Amarna, was a radical experiment. Built from nothing by Akhenaten and Nefertiti, it served as the physical and spiritual center of their monotheistic religion, worshipping the Aten. It was planned meticulously, with palaces, temples, and homes arranged in direct alignment with the sun's movement. That wasn't just spiritual design, it was solar engineering. These people were serious about their sunshine. A fringe tidbit for your sleepy brain. Egyptian plasterers sometimes hid little doodles or jokes underneath the walls they painted. In one area near the royal palace, archaeologists found a cartoon of a bald man chasing flies with a stick. Possibly a scribe, possibly just someone very done with mosquitoes. So, yeah, ancient palace workers also got bored. You turn a corner and enter a room that feels cooler and quieter than the rest. This is no throne room. It's something softer. Perhaps a study or a place where Nefertiti met with her daughters or advisors or simply no one at all. There's a bench along the far wall, cushions flattened with time. You sit. The walls are painted with golden reeds and birds mid-flight, frozen in a moment of migration. You can almost hear her voice in this room, not loud, but present. Calm, precise, not the commanding bellow of a ruler, but the practiced tone of someone who always gets what she wants anyway. Her influence wasn't loud, it was atmospheric. Historians still argue whether Nefertiti was simply a powerful queen or something more. Some believe she became co-regent, ruling equally alongside Akhenaten. Others say she took the throne after him, disguising herself as a male pharaoh under the name Smenkhkare. The records are full of gaps, names scratched out, titles swapped. It's like history itself got nervous about how much power she held. You rise and move toward the open hallway where golden light pools like syrup on the floor. There are steps leading upward, wide, shallow steps, meant to be walked slowly, gracefully, barefoot. At the top is a sun court, no ceiling, just the open sky above and a square of stone below, where Nefertiti likely stood during ceremonies, offering incense, speaking to the Aten, watching shadows shrink at midday. The stone here is warm on your hands. You lie down for a moment face to the sky. The same sky she would have stared into. The same sun, same clouds, same endless blue. For all her fame, all her mystery, Nefertiti was still someone who stood under this light and felt at times small. Human. You close your eyes, and the breeze passes over your face like a silk scarf. Somewhere far off, you hear sandals scuffing softly on stone. Maybe it's a servant. Maybe it's her. But the footsteps don't hurry. Nothing here does. You linger in the palace a little longer. Let your eyes follow the birds painted along the doorframes, wings outstretched forever. Let your mind soften at the edges, the way her world does. Sharp history slowly eroding into myth, then into dream. Then, gently, you rise. The palace remains behind you, a soft glow in the back of your mind, like the memory of a nap you once took in the sun. Morning in Akhetaten doesn't explode. It stretches. Like a cat. Like Nefertiti herself, probably. You stand quietly in the palace courtyard, where the sky shifts from velvet to powdered gold. The city doesn't roar to life. It exhales. Soft coals crackle under clay ovens. Servants stir gently. Birds begin their gossip. And from behind the high linen curtains, the queen is waking. You're not spying. You're invited, kind of. Float silently now, past carved pillars and into her private chambers. The air here is cooler, perfumed faintly with sandalwood and a hint of crushed rose. The windows are high and open, letting in filtered beams of early sunlight, soft as milk, but real enough to warm your skin. In the center of the room lies a low bed, more like a cushioned platform, draped in layers of gauze-like linen. And there she is, Nefertiti, half wrapped in sheets, one leg kicked lazily out like she's already had the dream you're just entering. She doesn't leap from bed. No queen does. She emerges, slowly, deliberately. A servant brushes her dark hair as she sits up, yawning behind a slim hand. You hear the faint clink of bronze bracelets being clasped. Linen shifts across her shoulders like whispered silk. Someone smooths oil into her skin, which smells like almonds and moonlight. Her mirror sits nearby, polished to a reflective sheen, bronze framed in ivory. She studies herself not vainly, but with precision. This is not a woman preoccupied with beauty. This is a ruler putting on her armor. And that armor is symmetry. The black coal is applied in practiced, fluid strokes, stretching from the inner corner of each eye outward like falcon wings. It's not just style, it's protection. They believed the eye paint shielded them from the sun's glare and from disease. Science, by the way, later confirmed the antimicrobial properties of that coal. Turns out the Egyptians were doing skincare and self-defense. The iconic blue crown isn't yet on her head. It waits on a pedestal nearby, regal even without anyone inside it. That flat-topped, tall headdress, nobody knows exactly why she wore it. Maybe to stand apart from male rulers. Maybe to create a silhouette so striking it became immortal. Or maybe she just liked it. We're allowed to hope she had good taste. A historical fact glides into the room. Nefertiti's beauty wasn't just legendary, it was politically weaponized. Her image was everywhere in Akhenaten, temples, walls, public courtyards. In some scenes, she's depicted smiting enemies alongside Akhenaten, a role typically reserved for pharaohs alone. She was more than a pretty face. She was propaganda with perfect cheekbones. A lesser-known detail you might like. Archaeologists have found makeup containers belonging to elite Egyptian women, made of ivory and alabaster, often with secret compartments, some even carved into little animals. Imagine unrolling your glam kit and popping the head off a tiny stone duck to grab your eyeliner. That's how queens did it. As she finishes dressing, Nefertiti stands near a pool of sunlight and lets the warmth hit her face. Her eyes close for just a moment. She's not praying, at least not aloud, but the silence is thick with intention. Her linen dress is pleated, simple yet exquisite, clinging lightly to her form. She wears wide gold cuffs at her wrists, etched with lotus patterns. Around her neck, a collar of lapis, turquoise, and carnelian gleams like a constellation. You follow her as she walks through the hall. No shoes, just quiet steps. She moves like someone who knows the floor is lucky to be walked on. Along the way, other members of the household bow their heads, not out of fear, but deep, practiced reverence. This queen was no shadow behind the throne. She was the throne's twin. In many scenes, she and Akhenaten are shown the same size, a detail that subtly screams equality, authority, power. Historians still argue whether Nefertiti's power extended beyond religion. Did she make decisions on trade, military, architecture, or was her influence mostly ceremonial? The records are frustratingly selective. Tons of poetry and paintings, very little paperwork. The kind of queen who left behind more brushstrokes than blueprints. She exits into another courtyard, this one bathed in golden light now. You feel the shift in her energy. The calm of her chamber evaporates. Now she's the queen in daylight, observed, documented, possibly adored. A scribe begins to follow, quietly jotting down her movements, maybe her mood. That's what scribes did. Recorded royal gestures, facial expressions, even sneeze frequency. Okay, maybe not that last one. Every blink could mean something, but even now, there's grace in the monotony. Nefertiti doesn't rush. She pauses to touch a vine hanging from the stone overhang. She adjusts a flower in a servant's hair. She notices things, and that noticing? That's how power holds itself softly. At the far end of the courtyard, a small shrine glows with gold foil leaf. It's a private altar to Aten, the sun god. A brazier smokes gently beside it. Nefertiti stops there, eyes closed. Not performative, not theatrical, just still. She lifts her face again to the sun, that same ancient sun hanging above your life too. And you wonder, for a heartbeat, if she's aware of being remembered, of being seen now by you. A cat winds around her ankles. Cats were sacred, yes, but also practical. Snake chasers, pest hunters, royal companions. She stoops to scratch its head. For just a moment, she's not the queen. She's a woman in the morning sun, with warm hands and a busy day ahead. She walks on, and you follow, drifting through rooms that echo her presence. Her scent lingers in curtains. Her laughter somewhere ahead trails like incense. The day has only just begun, and so has her story. You leave the quiet sanctum of the queen's chambers behind, the polished halls giving way to a softer chaos, sunlight, laughter, and tiny feet scurrying across mosaic floors. It's the royal nursery, but don't imagine cribs and lullabies. This is more like a royal jungle gym wrapped in linen and lotus petals. 6 daughters, all girls, all born of Nefertiti and Akhenaten. And they don't tiptoe, they sprint, through halls painted with cranes and crocodiles, past columns wrapped in creeping vines and the painted fingers of the Aten. The girls squeal and giggle like they own the kingdom, which for a brief moment in history, they kind of did. You duck slightly as one darts past you, a flash of beaded hair and mischief. Another trails behind, clutching a carved wooden doll, its eyes wide, limbs jointed at the shoulders like it's been caught mid-curtsy. These aren't fragile princesses. These are sun daughters. Royal, yes, but wild with the kind of joy only children of gods and kings are allowed to carry. One of the girls pauses to inspect a flower petal. Another tries to balance a loaf of bread on her head. They mimic their mother in everything. You see them miming royal processions, holding their hands just so, correcting each other's posture with the same dignity they watched Nefertiti, perfect in the morning mirror. The air is filled with jasmine and honey. Somewhere nearby, a harp strums softly, more background than concert. It's the kind of music you don't really hear. It just exists with the sunlight like part of the architecture. A historical note floats into view. All 6 daughters of Nefertiti are depicted frequently in the art of Amarna, more than most royal children in Egyptian history. Their names were Meritaten, Meketaten, Ankhesenaten, later Ankhesenamun, yes, that Ankhesenamun, Neferneferuaten Tasherit, Neferneferur, and Setepenre. No sons are officially recorded from Nefertiti, only girls, and they weren't just background figures. They were featured in family rituals, processions, and temple scenes. That's unusual, and it wasn't by accident. One of the stranger tidbits? Some depictions show the girls with elongated skulls, a stylized exaggeration perhaps, or a nod to a real tradition of head shaping that might have signaled divine or royal lineage. Either way, it made them look different, otherworldly, like little sun spirits in linen robes. You follow the soft patter of feet into an open-air play space shaded by palm fronds. Servants hover at a respectful distance, offering sweet treats and damp cloths for dusty fingers. There's a tiny pet gazelle napping in one corner, while a monkey chews lazily on something it definitely wasn't given permission to eat. Nefertiti appears again, stepping into the sunlight like a second sunrise. The girls spot her immediately. Everything changes. They race to her, swarming around her legs, tugging at her robes, chattering all at once. She listens, she crouches, she kisses foreheads, brushes back curls. There's no queen in that moment. Only a mother. She lifts the youngest into her arms and spins her around gently, the girl's laughter ringing like a bell. The others clap, begging for their turn. Nefertiti obliges, regal twirls and all. Her lapis necklace catches the sun and scatters it across the ground like a prism. You see it now, not just the power she held, but the humanity she gave away freely. To her children, to this city, to the god she worshipped so fiercely. Historians still argue whether Nefertiti's devotion to the Aten was genuine faith or clever politics. Some believe she truly felt the sun's love in her bones, Others say it was a performance designed to unify a kingdom under one warm glow. Maybe it was both. Maybe she believed because she had to. One of the daughters, Ankasenpatan, the third, trips while twirling and bursts into tears. Nefertiti is there instantly, kneeling, cradling her gently. She wipes the girl's face, whispers something only the child can hear, and kisses the spot just between her eyebrows. You almost forget this little girl will one day marry the boy king Tutankhamun, that this dusty child with scraped knees will eventually be written into every museum brochure you've ever skimmed. But right now, she's just a daughter in her mother's arms, safe in the shade, wrapped in linen and lullabies. You wander toward a low bench near the colonnade. Sit for a bit. Let the sun soak your skin while the girls dart around like dragonflies. The queen occasionally glances your way, not alarmed, not curious, just aware. You're not a ghost here. You're part of the quiet. The monkey from earlier hops onto the bench beside you and steals a date from a tray you didn't even notice was there. You let him. He has the confidence of someone who's never been told no. A breeze kicks up, ruffling your clothes, sending small flowers drifting across the polished stone. Nefertiti's laughter echoes again, deeper now, richer. It's a full-throated sound like someone who's genuinely happy, just for a moment. And maybe that's the secret to her power. Not just the beauty, the politics, or the prayers, but this deep, glowing capacity to live in her own body, in her own moment. As the sun climbs higher, the daughters begin to slow. One curls up beside the pet gazelle. Another leans against a column, eyes heavy. The monkey flops backward dramatically in your lap. You rise quietly, give a nod to the queen, because what else can you offer someone who's already eternal? And slip back through the shadowed hallway as the nursery fades behind you. Their laughter still rings in your ears even after it's gone. The sun has climbed higher now, tilting just past mid-morning and pouring itself generously across the palace. It spills over the flagstones like honey and dances across the pools where lotus flowers float half asleep. You follow Nefertiti into the gardens again, not the ones from earlier, private and hushed, but broader ones, open to soft laughter, clinking cups, and the gentle slosh of water being ladled into shallow stone basins. It's lunch, though no one here calls it that. In this world, it's a meal taken when the sun warms the spine just enough to loosen the day's plans. You watch as Nefertiti reclines beneath a palm-thatched awning, her body draped elegantly across a cushioned seat, her bare feet tucked beneath her. Around her, trays are laid out. Neat piles of grapes, cut figs, honey-glazed bread, roasted duck wrapped in vine leaves. Nothing spills, nothing hurries. Servants move quietly, some fanning gently, others pouring chilled beer into ceramic cups. Not the foamy, frothy kind you know. Egyptian beer was thick, more like a barley smoothie. It's surprisingly nutritious, and no one here blinks at day drinking. Honestly, they'd probably be confused that you don't do it more often. You take a seat, yes, right there, beside the queen. Of course, no one tells you not to. This is a dream, after all. Or a memory. Or some divine combination of both. Nefertiti doesn't look at you, but she smiles just enough to let you know you're allowed to exist in this moment. The conversation around her is slow, rhythmic, like reeds rustling along the Nile. Courtiers murmur news from other cities. A priest mutters something about water levels. There's a joke about a camel and a bad haircut. Nefertiti sips from her cup, rolls her eyes, and says something so dry it could dehydrate a cactus. Everyone laughs. A mainstream fact for your mental filing cabinet. Nefertiti held titles that were more than ceremonial. Great royal wife was standard, but mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt? That's serious business. She attended foreign delegations, led rituals, and her name was carved alone on stelae, equal in size and placement to Akhenaten. She wasn't just present, she was prominent. A softer, stranger detail. In some depictions, Nefertiti is shown smirking. Not just smiling, but actually smirking. That's rare for Egyptian art, which tends toward the formal and symmetrical. But in the Amarna period, This brief flash of sun-soaked weirdness, human emotion made its way onto the walls. You can see affection, irritation, playfulness, and that little smirk. It's one of the most human things carved into stone in all of ancient history. Back at the table, a tray is offered to you. Go ahead, take a bite. The bread is soft, gently sweet from honey and date paste. A tiny pitcher of pomegranate juice waits nearby. It tastes like tart sun. You watch as the queen dips a fig into a little dish of goat cheese and takes her time chewing. Royalty knows how to stretch a meal. Children's laughter echoes faintly in the distance. Maybe the daughters again, or just the general hum of a city alive and breathing. The palace walls don't confine sound. They invite it. You notice that now, how no space here feels closed. The lines between inside and outside are blurred by wide archways and open-air rooms. Even meals are part of the landscape. Nefertiti's sister, Mutnojmet, joins her, draped in linen dyed a soft sea green. They lean close, whisper something about a visiting sculptor with ambitions too large for his nose. You chuckle without meaning to. The queen glances sideways at you and raises one eyebrow as if to say, "Told you he was ridiculous." Historians still argue whether Mutnojmet was Nefertiti's actual sister, or just a court lady given an honorary title. Records during the Amarna period are famously inconsistent. Whole names vanish, gods are erased, and sometimes even pharaohs get airbrushed out of history. But the bond between these two women, that feels real. You can sense it in the shared laughter, the mirrored gestures, the way one leans in just before the other speaks. As the meal winds down, musicians arrive, not with fanfare, but with flutes and small harps. They settle in the shade and begin a slow, lilting tune, almost like a lullaby for the sun itself. You can't understand the lyrics, but it doesn't matter. It's the tone that counts, half sung, half hummed, like something sung to plants or lovers or sleeping gods. The queen closes her eyes, not asleep, just distant, as if riding the sound somewhere else, maybe remembering something, maybe forgetting something important on purpose. One of the musicians is blind. You can tell by the way he tilts his head, feeling the rhythm in his breath before his fingers ever touch the strings. They say blindness was not seen as a weakness in ancient Egypt, but a gift, an internal vision. And listening to him play now, you believe it. The afternoon heat begins to settle in. A servant offers a cool cloth to Nefertiti's neck, and she accepts it with a nod so slight it's almost imagined. The guests begin to drift away. The tray's empty. The last fig is taken by the monkey, who's back again and looking smug. You rise with the queen, follow her down a columned walkway dappled in leaf shadow. Her pace is slower now, not tired, just unhurried. She's already eaten, laughed, whispered a few decisions. The day in many ways has already been ruled. As you walk, the garden fades behind you, not disappearing, just softening into memory. Like the flavor of honey after it's gone. You carry the warmth of that lunch with you, the sweetness, the silence, the sound of a queen smirking in the sun. The afternoon light begins to stretch long shadows across the stone, and you trail behind Nefertiti as she steps into one of the cooler, quieter chambers of the palace. This room is different, quieter, sure, but also reverent. You can feel it in the way everyone speaks one tone lower, walks a little slower. There's no gold here, no banquet trays or vine-wrapped duck legs. Just a soft, dry smell of paint, dust, and wood shavings. And in the center of the room, the artist. He doesn't notice you at first, he's too focused, leaning close to a limestone bust, brush hovering near the lips, not touching yet, just deciding. He's been here for hours, maybe days. The floor is littered with discarded sketches, palette shards, fragments of pigment shells. Light filters through a latticed window and lands directly on his subject. Her. Nefertiti stands before her own likeness, silent and composed. Her arms are folded loosely, not judging, just watching. The bust stares forward with that now iconic gaze, high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes, eyebrows arched in calm amusement, the full lips, slightly parted, that impossible symmetry. You know this face. You've seen it in museum posters, documentaries, gift shop tote bags. But here, right now, it's being born in stone. Historical fact for this soft, echoing space. The famous limestone bust of Nefertiti was discovered in 1912 in the ruins of this very workshop in Amarna. Created by the sculptor Thutmose, it's considered one of the most beautiful artistic relics of the ancient world. The bust was likely a model used for teaching apprentices, meaning it wasn't meant to leave this room. Just imagine, the most famous face of Egypt almost stayed a study sketch. A quirkier, oddly cozy fact: the bust is unfinished. One eye lacks inlay, left blank, possibly intentionally. Some believe it was a technique, a teaching tool. Others say it was a sign of respect, never completed because the sculptor didn't dare claim perfection. Or maybe, just maybe, it was never finished because she walked out before he could. You watch the sculptor, Thutmose, pause and wipe his brow. His fingers are dusted with red ochre. There's a smear on his forearm that looks like a tiny sunrise. He steps back to squint at the angle of the neck. Nefertiti hasn't moved. She doesn't need to. She's the original and the echo, the mold and the mystery. Historians still argue whether this bust was a faithful likeness or an idealized symbol. Was this truly how she looked or how she wanted to be remembered? Her features are too perfect, too balanced, and yet too human to feel fake. She doesn't look like a goddess. She looks like someone you might almost recognize, someone who'd smirk at your joke before outmaneuvering your entire dynasty. You move around the room, gently, the way one might drift through an afternoon nap. The walls are lined with other works in progress, carvings of priests, busts of courtiers, even a child's face unfinished, one side still raw stone. But none of them carry the presence that this one does. Nefertiti turns her head slightly, looking now at a different piece. It's a small relief half-sketched of her family worshipping a 10. There she is, in profile, offering a tray of incense. Akhenaten beside her, daughters below, the rays of the sun reaching down like fingers again. It's quiet devotion carved into plaster. The artist clears his throat, unsure whether to explain or stay silent. She says nothing. Instead, she walks to a low bench and sits. The sculptor goes back to his work. It's not tense, it's timeless. The kind of moment where time itself softens, hangs in the air like wood dust. You sit beside her again, close enough to feel the heat still radiating off her skin. She doesn't speak, doesn't need to. Her gaze stays fixed on the half-finished bust. There's something there, some inner thought she's not sharing. Maybe she's deciding if it looks right. Or maybe she's wondering if this is how she'll be remembered when the sun finally sets for good. Outside, you hear the muffled coo of doves in the garden. Somewhere, distant footfalls. But in here, everything feels wrapped in gauze. A servant enters quietly with a small bowl of pigment. Blue, deep as nightfall. Made from ground lapis lazuli, imported all the way from Afghanistan. Thousands of miles carried just to make this shade of royalty. The sculptor dips his brush, waits, and with one breath begins to paint the crown. That flat-topped, unmistakable blue crown, the one that would later be plastered across every art history textbook. But right now, it's just a blue line, drawn slow and steady. You glance from the statue to the woman beside you, one still, one breathing, and yet somehow it's the statue that feels more alive. The queen finally speaks, and her voice is softer than you imagined. "Do you think it looks like me?" she asks. You don't answer. Because you don't know, because maybe it doesn't matter. She stands and walks toward the bust, bending slightly to look it in the eye. You wonder, for just a moment, if she sees herself in there, or if she sees someone she's never met, someone she's becoming. And then, without a word, she turns and leaves the room. No farewell. Just a swish of linen, the scent of sandalwood, and a silence that somehow follows her like a second shadow. The sculptor keeps working. You watch the paint dry. The light outside has begun to lean golden again, long and syrupy, soaking the corridors with a color that feels more like a lullaby than illumination. You follow Nefertiti out of the workshop and into a narrower passage. This part of the palace is quieter, dustier, the kind of silence that suggests stories tucked into stone crevices. Here, fewer footsteps echo. Here the air smells of parchment, oil lamps, and old secrets. She walks a little differently here, more purposeful. You sense that this is no longer about court rituals or royal appearances. This, right here, is something older than titles. At the end of the hallway waits a chamber unlike any other you've seen so far. It's not a room of splendor, but of symbols. Softly lit by a high slit of a window, it glows with filtered gold, like being inside a jewelry box half shut. On the walls are carved the sun disk and its rays, always the rays. But here, they reach not toward mortals, but toward shelves. Books? Not quite. Scrolls mostly. Papyrus bundles wrapped in linen, tied with cords. This is her personal chamber of study, a private archive, known to only a few. And now, somehow, to you. Nefertiti walks the shelves slowly, fingertips grazing the scrolls like she's greeting old friends. You can hear her murmuring to herself, snatches of phrases in a tongue that curls and loops like the hieroglyphs on the walls. It's not for your ears, not yet. A mainstream historical detail for your sleepy curiosity. Egypt had one of the most organized systems of record-keeping in the ancient world. Priests, scribes, administrators, everyone kept records, marriage contracts, hymns, crop yields. And in palaces like this, the royal family had access to texts on medicine, ritual, astronomy, even philosophy. Nefertiti may not have written them, but you better believe she read them, and a curious, rarely mentioned twist. Some scholars believe that Nefertiti could read and write, unusual for women of the time, even of royal blood. Her depictions show her with scrolls in hand, which might not be mere symbolism. There's even one fragment showing her correcting a scribe, quill in hand with that same infamous smirk. Historians still argue, you think, whether this was literacy or simply ceremonial. But standing here, watching her inspect a scroll like she's weighing its soul, you suspect it's the former. She's not pretending. She's remembering. She settles finally on a narrow scroll wrapped in soft reed fiber. Unrolling it slowly, she sinks onto a low stool near a sun-warmed wall. You move to sit beside her again. By now it's become instinct. The scroll's surface is faintly cracked, the ink faded in some places, but the drawings, tiny, intricate, remain. A solar boat gliding across waves, a lotus rising from the dark. The words that follow are a hymn, not to gods, but to Aten. She begins to chant, not loudly, not even in full voice, just enough for the air to vibrate. The melody is strange, not musical in the modern sense, more like a ripple across silk. Something sacred trying not to wake the world. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. They believed the sun was not just a god, but the god, source of all life. No underworld, no chaos serpent waiting below, just day and night, light and absence. Nefertiti's husband, Akhenaten, had changed Egypt's whole theology for this belief, and she had walked beside him through the firestorm of reform. Equal, echo, flame to his flame. But as you sit here now in this quiet chamber of reed scrolls and dying sunlight, you wonder, was she a believer? Or simply brilliant? Was this devotion? Or diplomacy? Faith? Or finesse? A tiny beetle skitters across the floor. Nefertiti watches it for a moment, then gently lifts a papyrus corner to let it pass. Even now she rules gently. Then she speaks again, this time to you. They will forget me one day, she says, for a while, but not forever. You don't respond. You don't need to. She isn't sad. She's certain. It's a whisper of a prophecy. Because here's another historical debate that refuses to die quietly. Nefertiti vanished from records in the 12th year of Akhenaten's reign. Some say she died. Others say she became pharaoh under a new name. A few, bolder still, claim she ruled alone for a time, perhaps even as Smenkhkare, a shadowy figure who appears briefly in records, then vanishes like mist. The scroll drops slightly in her hand. Her gaze turns inward. You see the strain of responsibility behind her eyes, children raised under sun god hymns, political alliances like silk threads, a husband slowly becoming a god in his own mind. You realize something. Nefertiti was balancing more than a crown. She was balancing an entire new world, and no one really noticed until the world cracked. Outside, a bird calls once, a low cooing sound. She rises, one final look at the scroll. Then she gently re-rolls it and places it back in its place. Her fingers linger just a second too long on the cord as she ties it. You can tell she's sealing not just the scroll, but something bigger. The light has shifted now. Dust motes dance visibly like tiny spirits catching their last chance to stretch. You walk behind her again, into the hall, into that eternal hush between day and dusk. She pauses, places her hand on the wall, a gesture that seems almost habitual. Maybe there's something buried behind it. Maybe not. But the motion says, I was here. I mattered. And in this quiet corridor, lined with forgotten words and sunlit truth, you believe her. Evening settles over Akhenaten with a hush that's more felt than heard. The Nile outside glimmers like molten bronze, and a breeze moves softly through the corridors, lifting linen curtains as if they're breathing. You follow Nefertiti into another part of the palace, no longer golden, no longer serene. This wing feels tense. The air here is cooler, thicker. The laughter of children and the scent of figs are long gone. She moves without guards now, without servants trailing her. You can tell this place isn't for show, it's for strategy, for secrets. You're in the administrative heart of the palace, the inner sanctum where decisions are argued, scribes whisper, and policies are inked behind closed doors. Here, not even a queen can always walk freely. Yet Nefertiti does. As you drift past chambers lit by flickering oil lamps, you catch fragments of sharp voices. Men, priests, advisors, some loud, some deliberately hushed. Names are dropped like stones. Akhenaten, Aten, Amun. Words like heresy and legacy, and the old ways. You slow your steps. You are not meant to hear this, but you do. Nefertiti pauses near a half-shut doorway. Inside, a meeting simmers. Not quite an argument, not yet, but you can feel the friction in the air, the heat of hidden fury. The people miss the old gods, says one gravelly voice. The temples stand empty. They feared the gods because we told them to, another replies. They'll fear the sun just as well, if not better. A third speaks softly but firmly. The queen is more popular than the pharaoh. That cannot last. Nefertiti doesn't flinch. She leans in, just a fraction, listening, learning. You realize that in this palace, power doesn't always come from the throne. It leaks through the walls, through whispers, through the pause before a name is spoken. Here's a mainstream historical fact to drift on. Akhenaten's religious reforms were radical. He closed temples dedicated to Amun and other gods, redirected resources to the cult of Aten, and moved Egypt's capital to Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna. It was a clean break from millennia of polytheism, and it made him wildly unpopular with the powerful priesthood of Amun, which is where Nefertiti came in, charming the people, managing the politics, holding things together while her husband chased the sun. But here's a less discussed oddity. At the height of Aten worship, Nefertiti was shown in artwork performing roles usually reserved for pharaohs, smashing enemies, riding chariots, making offerings. Some believe she co-ruled as equal partner, if not more. Others whisper she had ambitions beyond even Akhenaten's reach. You pass another room. Inside, scribes scribble furiously, while a man paces with scrolls clutched in both hands, arguing over grain distribution. The temples used to handle this, he mutters. Now it all goes through a ten's house. The people notice when their granaries go empty. Another debate begins over land. Land once owned by temples, now transferred to the royal household. You begin to understand. This isn't just religion. It's economics. It's infrastructure. It's power. And that power is shifting. Fast. Historians still argue whether Nefertiti was a religious zealot or a political tactician, you think. And standing beside her now, watching her quietly assess the room without stepping into it, you start to suspect she was both. And something more. She turns and walks away, down another hall where torches cast long shadows on reliefs of a ten's rays. You follow her toward a private chamber where she meets an older man, cloaked in fine linen, his bald head gleaming under the flame's shimmer. He is a former high priest of Amun, now retired but still consulted. A holdover from the old order. Their conversation is soft, not confrontational. There's familiarity, respect, maybe even affection. This is not an enemy. This is a relic of the world they left behind. You know they're waiting for Akhenaten to falter, he tells her. I know, she replies. They will wait for you too. You shine brighter than he does. Nefertiti says nothing for a moment, just watches the flicker of the flame. They mistake steadiness for softness, she finally says. Let them. You sit with that. Steadiness mistaken for softness. It loops in your head like a lullaby with teeth. Later, walking the corridor again, you begin to realize how much of Nefertiti's power lies in her silence, her ability to be still in the storm. While others shout, she watches. While others plot, she smiles. And somehow she always ends up one step ahead. There's a final chamber, tucked at the end of the hallway, where stone tablets are laid out on low tables. You hover beside her as she glides between them. Diplomatic letters, gifts, requests for alliances, pleas from vassal states, all written in Akkadian, the diplomatic lingua franca of the ancient Near East. Nefertiti reads one aloud, barely above a whisper. A request for troops, another asking for gold. One even jokes that Egypt must be too busy with their new son to respond to their old friends. You can almost hear the sarcasm in the clay. A quirky detail to curl up with. One letter sent to Egypt from a foreign king refers directly to the queen, not Akhenaten as the voice of Egypt. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't etiquette. That was recognition. She places one tablet back in size, not with exhaustion, but with calculation. There's always more to manage, more to anticipate. The future keeps arriving, and she keeps shaping it before anyone else notices. You exit with her into the open courtyard. The sun is gone, but its heat still clings to the stone. A few guards nod in her direction, but stay where they are. No one stops her. No one dares. She looks up at the stars, slowly appearing above. One hand rests gently on her waist. The other curls against her side like she's weighing something invisible. You wonder what she's thinking, and whether history ever gave her enough credit for how much she actually did. A shadow moves behind her. One of the advisors from earlier. He stops short, seeing you both. Then bows. Low. Too low. He knows who really holds the threads. Nefertiti walks on into the night without looking back. And you follow, because where else would you go? The palace is quieter now. Not silent. No Egyptian palace is ever truly silent, but the kind of hush that settles when everyone knows the day is over and yet no one quite wants to admit it. Servants pad softly through stone halls. The echo of sandals on limestone has slowed. You feel the weight of twilight stretching long across the floor like a sleeping cat. You follow Nefertiti up a short staircase you hadn't noticed before, spiraling toward a higher level of the palace. She doesn't announce where you're going, but you feel it. Something sacred, something less political. The hum of arguments and administration has faded. Now the mood is almost devotional. She steps onto a rooftop terrace. The city below yawns wide in ochre, deep shadows painting its curves. Far off, the river reflects just the last sliver of light. You can see Akhetaten laid out like a fan, its wide boulevards, open plazas, and rectangular buildings, all perfectly aligned with the path of the sun. This wasn't an accident. This entire city was built for Aten, the disk of light in the sky. It's not just home, it's a monument to devotion, and in this moment, it's a stage for a very quiet ritual. Nefertiti's daughters begin to gather, all 6 of them, dressed in pale linen. They arrive barefoot, stepping softly, carrying small bowls of incense and bouquets of blue lotus. You recognize their faces from temple walls frozen in profile. Meritaten, the eldest, already graceful and poised. Paten, still restless, always watching. The younger girls, sleepy but determined to be part of this. They form a half-circle around their mother, and then, without trumpet, priest, or ceremony, they begin their evening offering to Aten. You've seen religious rites before, loud, smoky, full of chanting. This is not that. This is like watching a painting slowly breathe. Each girl takes a turn, raising her bowl toward the fading light in the west. The incense twists upward like thin silver vines, curling into the sky. Nefertiti joins them last. She raises both hands, palms open, in perfect symmetry with the sun's rays carved on every temple wall. The breeze catches her robe, and for a moment she looks not like a queen, but like the Aten itself, radiant, eternal, quiet. A mainstream historical note here. During the Amarna period, the royal family was depicted in ways no other pharaohs ever were, eating together, praying together, playing with their children. This break from stiff formality was radical. It showed affection, humanity, and domesticity. Whether that was just political theater or genuine closeness, we'll never fully know. But the imagery doesn't lie. This family worshiped together. They loved together, or at least wanted to be seen that way. Now here's the fringe detail you probably haven't heard. Some Egyptologists believe these rooftop offerings, especially at dusk, were done daily, not just in temples, but at the palace itself, and that women, especially Nefertiti and her daughters, led many of them. Aten's worship emphasized light, life, and familial harmony. Who better to embody that than a queen and her 6 daughters, facing the dying light with open hands? As you sit on the edge of the terrace, the ritual winds down. One by one, the girls leave their offerings in a shallow stone altar shaped like the horizon. The lotus flowers bob gently in the evening breeze. The scent of myrrh and cinnamon hangs in the air, a lullaby for the sun. Nefertiti lingers. She doesn't look at the horizon now. She looks at you. "Do you think they understand?" she asks softly. "What we tried to do?" The question hangs in the air like smoke. It's not clear if she means the people, or the future, or perhaps even her daughters. Historians still argue whether Atenism was ever truly embraced, you recall. Was it a state cult forced on the masses, a fleeting royal whim, or a genuine movement that failed only because it rose too quickly? Either way, its traces remain, in art, in architecture, and in stories like this. Quiet offerings under fading light. Nefertiti walks to the stone railing and looks down at her city. You can feel how much of herself she poured into it, not just as a queen, but as a mother, a believer, and a builder of something that was supposed to last forever. You hear faint music now, not from the terrace, but somewhere deep in the palace. A harp, a flute, soft winding tones that float up through the columns like smoke from a candle just snuffed. She listens for a moment, then smiles. "That's Meritaten's idea," she says. "Music at dusk, so the gods don't forget to listen." You wonder how often Nefertiti has stood here like this, watching, waiting, hoping that what they built will outlast them. Another daughter yawns loudly behind you, breaking the silence with an unintentional snort. Nefertiti chuckles. A real earthy laugh. The kind only a mother makes when her child reminds her that, despite everything, they are still children. The girls begin to drift off, one by one. The stars are brighter now. The moon's silver face begins to rise over the desert. The offerings sit quietly, glowing faintly in the starlight. The breeze tugs at your sleeves. And now, it's just her again. Just Nefertiti. She doesn't say anything else. Just sits down, legs tucked under her, gaze fixed on the stars. She tilts her head to the side, and you get the feeling she's listening for something. Not music, not prayers. Maybe silence itself. Because sometimes silence says more than all the scrolls and temples in the world. And maybe that's what she's always known. You sit beside her, not as a historian, not as a tourist in time, just as someone who, for a little while, has been allowed to see the quiet spaces between power and devotion, between rule and ritual. And in that silence, Nefertiti smiles. Not for you, not for the city, not even for Aten, just for herself. The moon hangs heavy now, high and round above the desert, casting a ghostly glow over the rooftops of Akhenaten. Everything has softened. The sandstone seems to breathe. Shadows melt into the walls, and the palace hums with a stillness too calm to disturb. You follow Nefertiti once more, quietly, as always, as she steps down from the terrace, her bare feet silent on the stone. This isn't the queen in gold with crowds parting before her. This is just a woman winding down her day. She makes her way to her private quarters. No attendants this time. Just you and the soft creak of the wooden door that leads to her balcony. The room is not what you expect. It's intimate. A curved ceiling dotted with painted stars, walls with faded frescoes of papyrus blooms, and a low table cluttered with things no official scribe would ever bother to record. A half-burned stick of cinnamon, a worn reed pen, a carved toy lion. Nothing extravagant, just human. She lights a single oil lamp and steps out onto the balcony. The desert stretches out before her. From here you can see the outer edge of Akhenaten taper into sand, where no walls stand and no guards patrol. Just open space, where wind and time do their work uninterrupted. She sits on a low stool, elbows on the railing. The linen shawl wrapped around her now is simple, dyed with indigo and sun-worn at the edges. She looks up, resting her chin in one hand. You do the same. There's something about the moonlight tonight. It's like a softer version of the Aten, still watching but less demanding. You start to feel the weight of everything that's happened in her day. The debates, the rituals, the long unspoken strategies. She carries it all in her shoulders, in the lines at the corners of her mouth, in the way she exhales, not exhausted, but aware. She picks up a small scroll and reads for a while. The script is tight and precise, Akkadian again. Probably a letter from some anxious king, promising loyalty and wondering when Egypt will reply. She reads without hurry, then without any drama, sets it down and lets it flutter gently to the floor. You don't ask what it said. You can tell it doesn't matter anymore. Not tonight. Here's a historical fact to tuck under your pillow. Akhenaten and Nefertiti were among the few royal couples in Egyptian history to be depicted as equals in private and public life. They're shown kissing, playing with children, even riding in chariots together. Nefertiti wasn't just a consort, she was a partner. Some believe she even took on the role of co-regent, ruling beside, or even in place of Akhenaten during his later years. But here's a little-known fringe detail. There's a theory that Nefertiti didn't just fade into obscurity after her husband's reign, but instead re-emerged under a different name, Smenkhkare, a short-lived pharaoh whose identity is still hotly debated. The features carved into statues and reliefs of Smenkhkare are oddly familiar. Feminine, even. Could it be her, ruling alone in disguise? Or was it someone else entirely? You glance over at her, lit only by moonlight now, and think, maybe it was her. Maybe she wasn't done. Maybe queens don't vanish. Maybe they just change masks. Historians still argue whether Nefertiti ruled as Smenkhkare, you think, as the breeze lifts the hem of her robe and a soft gust sends that letter skittering across the balcony like a leaf. She leans back in her chair and closes her eyes. The lines of her face relax. She doesn't speak, but you can feel her mind still ticking, running through names, alliances, futures that haven't happened yet. Even in stillness, she governs. Far below, the city begins to sleep. A lone dog barks. A lute plays somewhere softly. You imagine a servant finishing his last task, a scribe putting down his pen, a child mumbling in dreams about blue lotus blooms and painted crocodiles. And here she is, above it all. Not to rule, just to be. She opens her eyes again and looks up at the sky. The stars are brighter now, free from Aten's glare. You wonder if she misses the old gods. Thoth, Isis, Anubis. Did she ever believe in them? Or was Aten a true revelation for her? Faith or politics? Vision or necessity? She doesn't say. Instead, she reaches for a small bronze bowl and strikes the rim with her nail. A high, clear tone rings out. She strikes it again, then again. It's a ritual, not for gods, for her. 3 notes, that's all. She smiles to herself. You suddenly wonder how many of these little ceremonies she performs that no one will ever know about. Things that won't appear on scrolls or temple walls. Things not meant for history, only for sleep. A shooting star cuts across the sky. Quick, bright, gone. She leans forward, elbows on the balcony once more, and rests her chin on her arms. You get the sense she could stay like that all night. So you do too. And there's comfort in that. No speeches, no commands, just 2 figures under the stars, one real, one drifting in her wake. This is Nefertiti not as a bust behind museum glass, not as a queen on a temple wall, but as a human being. Still regal, yes, but real, breathing, thinking, watching the same moon you are. And maybe that's the most enduring power of all. The moon has begun its slow descent, trading center stage with a deepening stillness. You stay beside her on the balcony until the sky turns the soft shade of pre-dawn indigo. But something has shifted, not in the air, in her. The next day arrives not with fanfare but with silence. The corridors are quieter than they should be. Servants whisper instead of greet. A thick tension clings to the palace walls, as if the sandstone itself is holding its breath. You notice first what's missing, not what's changed. No laughter from the royal nursery. No smell of incense trailing from the upper terrace. No rhythmic footfall of officials headed to audience chambers. And most notably, no Nefertiti. You wander the rooms where she should be. Her throne is vacant, her cushions unsat, her coal pot untouched. The royal bust in progress remains in the studio, but the artist hasn't shown up today either. Her presence, once everywhere, etched in stone, echoed in laughter, carried in sandalwood-scented air, has evaporated. Historians still argue whether Nefertiti died suddenly or simply disappeared from record on purpose. There are no tomb walls with her name, no funeral procession depicted in reliefs. She just exits stage left. One morning, she is no longer mentioned in official inscriptions. She goes from great royal wife to nothing. This erasure wasn't sloppy. It was deliberate. You start to notice something else. Her image, once paired beside Akhenaten in every relief, begins to vanish from newer carvings. Wall after wall now features the king alone, or with one of their daughters. Her name, once repeated like a prayer, is scratched out in places. You run your fingers along the uneven surface where her cartouche used to be. This isn't just death. This is damnatio memoriae, the Roman term for erasing someone from history. Except it happened here, in Egypt too. And yet, even in vanishing, she refuses to be forgotten. There are clues, strange, tantalizing ones. A graffiti scrawl behind a crumbling column refers to the lady who walks in moonlight. An official inventory lists a crown too narrow for a man's head. In one hall, there's a hastily chiseled depiction of a pharaoh with curiously feminine hips and a face that looks familiar. A scholar might call it smenkare. A storyteller might call it Nefertiti in disguise. A conspiracy theorist might call it a cover-up so massive it spans centuries. You wander deeper into the palace and end up in a long hallway where time seems trapped in amber. On the left, old inscriptions show her at the height of her power, hand raised in greeting, rays of a 10 pouring blessings on her crown. On the right, newer carvings replace her with a daughter or nothing at all. It's like watching a candle be snuffed out stroke by stroke, and yet, you can feel her more strongly than ever, because even in absence, she lingers, in the alignment of doorways with the sun, in the blue pigment on a crumbling fresco, in the scent of dried lotus caught between scrolls. She is missing, but never gone. Here's a mainstream historical point to sleep on. Some evidence suggests Nefertiti was promoted to co-regent late in Akhenaten's reign. She may have even ruled alone after his death, under the name Neferuaten. But the records are fragmentary, conflicting, and frustratingly vague. Ancient Egypt was never one to leave straightforward receipts. And the quirky theory you'll love? One fringe scholar once proposed that Nefertiti faked her own death to preserve Atenism, believing she could do more from the shadows than the throne. Like an ancient Egyptian Batman, but with eyeliner. Did she walk into the desert one day and never return? Did she trade her crown for a scribe's stylus, continuing her mission under a new name? Or did she simply, finally, sleep? You stand in a chamber with a high ceiling painted to resemble the heavens. It's cracked now, flaking stars falling like dreams. This might have been her prayer room, or maybe just a place to breathe. You run your hand along a low stone bench. Someone once sat here. Maybe her. Maybe not. But you sit anyway. Because even here, surrounded by absence, there's presence. Sometimes a whisper can be louder than a declaration. Sometimes a name unspoken is the one most remembered. And sometimes the disappearance of a queen becomes the very thing that makes her immortal. Nefertiti was never mummified in a tomb lined with gold. She wasn't granted the epic send-off of Ramses or the cursed infamy of Tutankhamun. She simply faded. But like the moon's reflection in the Nile, she's always just under the surface. Quiet, luminous, waiting to be noticed. The centuries pass like sand through your fingers. Dynasties rise and fall. New gods are praised, old ones are restored, and the memory of Akhenaten is wiped clean like a chalkboard after class. You drift now through time rather than space, an invisible traveler hitching a ride on windswept scrolls, sunken ruins, and the stubborn curiosity of archaeologists who can't let go. You hover above the 1800s, where explorers and looters clash like scarabs in the dust. The race is on. Egypt fever has struck Europe, fueled by mystery, mummies, and a hunger for lost beauty. And in all the chaos, one name flits in and out like smoke. Nefertiti. No body, no tomb, no official funeral. It's enough to drive any archaeologist just a little mad. You settle in beside a thin, sunburned man in a broad-brimmed hat. He squints at a map half-eaten by termites, muttering dates and dynasties under his breath. Behind him, locals dig through sand with bare hands. Dust rises, hopes rise, then fall again. They're looking for the queen with no grave. The hunt becomes obsession. Tombs are opened, robbed, catalogued, coffins inspected. One after another, they reveal secrets of forgotten priests, scribes, royal pets, but never her, never Nefertiti. And yet, she's everywhere. A fragment of a painted eye shows up in Amarna, on a piece of wall no bigger than your hand. It's unmistakably hers. The way the liner curves. The look of mild amusement that always suggests she knows something you don't. It's a whisper from the dust. I'm still here. Here's your historical breadcrumb for tonight. The tombs in the Valley of the Kings were mostly for male pharaohs, but there are a few exceptions. Yet not one, not a single clearly identified tomb, has been confirmed as belonging to Nefertiti. Amarna, the city she ruled from, was abandoned so thoroughly that even its royal dead were relocated or lost in the process. One tomb, labeled KV35, contained two mysterious female mummies, one of whom may be Nefertiti's daughter, but the other, still unidentified. Scholars debate, DNA tests give inconclusive results, and the ancient world keeps its lips sealed. And then, there's tomb KV62. You know this one. Everyone does. It belonged to Tutankhamun, Nefertiti's son-in-law, and possibly her son. When Howard Carter cracked it open in 1922, the world gasped. Golden masks, hidden chambers, a curse or two for good measure. But in recent years, something curious happened. Radars, scans, acoustic tests. Some experts began to suspect there was more to Tut's tomb than met the eye. Behind one wall, they claimed, might be a hidden chamber, one that hadn't been touched in 3,000 years. Speculation exploded. Could it be hers? Historians still argue whether Nefertiti's tomb lies behind that sealed wall. Some believe the shape of the chamber, the markings, and even the architecture suggest it was built for someone far more important than Tutankhamun. That maybe, just maybe, his tomb was a hijacked side room for the real queen. But digging through ancient rock isn't easy, especially when the Egyptian government, global politics, and preservation ethics collide like chariots on a narrow bridge. So for now, that wall remains unbroken. You find yourself standing before it, your ghost-like hand brushing its painted surface. It's quiet here, almost sacred. You can imagine her perfectly preserved just beyond it, arms folded, crown still poised, waiting for someone to knock. Or maybe not, because the thing is, Egypt doesn't always give up its secrets just because you ask nicely. Sometimes you need to earn them, and sometimes you're not meant to know. There's a fringe theory, of course, because there always is. Some believe Nefertiti's tomb was deliberately hidden in a decoy chamber, miles away from the Valley of the Kings, possibly somewhere in the desert north of Amarna. According to this story, her followers, loyal even after her disappearance, buried her beneath a false ruin under layers of rock with no markings and no map. A burial meant for forever, not for discovery, not for museums, just rest. Still, humans are terrible at letting go. Every few years, a new expedition sparks headlines. Nefertiti's tomb finally found. And every time, the sands remain stubborn, the truth just out of reach. You drift now through an archive, dusty and dim, with rolled maps, broken brushes, and photographs pinned to walls. Archaeologists scowl over findings. Debates erupt over a tiny shard of pottery. Someone swears they saw a Nefertiti-style earring in a side chamber of tomb KV21, but then it vanishes. The trail is cold, but the queen's presence still pulses, like a heartbeat muffled under centuries of silence. Because you don't need bones or sarcophagi to feel someone's story. You just need what she left behind. A painted bust, a city bathed in sunlight, a vision of beauty that even time couldn't fully erase. Back in Amarna, the wind howls softly over the empty streets. Stones that once bore her name lie shattered and buried. But the sky above remains unchanged. The same stars, the same moon, the same eternal hush, and somewhere out there, beneath sand, behind stone, or maybe only in your imagination, she's waiting. Not for fame, not for recognition, just for you to remember her. You find yourself back in that dreamlike corridor of memory, now tangled in theories thick as papyrus reeds. The further you go, the more uncertain the ground beneath your feet becomes. Nefertiti is no longer just a queen. She's a riddle wrapped in linen, sealed in a tomb that may not even exist. But that hasn't stopped people from trying to solve her. You lean in closer to a conference hall somewhere in Europe. Low lights, glowing projector, a group of Egyptologists half fighting, half whispering. And there, splashed across the screen, is the same question the world has asked for centuries. What really happened to Nefertiti? The room buzzes with possibilities. Was she erased because she fell from power? Was she too influential? Did she convert back to the old gods when Akhenaten died? Or was her disappearance all part of a master plan? Here's tonight's scholarly tug-of-war. Some experts believe Nefertiti didn't just disappear. She transformed into a pharaoh. The name Nefer-Neferuaten appears late in Akhenaten's reign, signing official decrees, leading rituals, and issuing royal commands. The style of writing, the iconography, it's all a little familiar. But is Nefer-Neferuaten Nefertiti? Or one of her daughters? Historians still argue whether Nefer-Neferuaten was Nefertiti, a separate ruler, or a placeholder until young Tutankhamun came of age. The records, as usual, are maddeningly vague. Half-finished carvings, broken stelae, names hastily chipped away. It's like the ancient Egyptians were trying to rewrite history in real time, and were left trying to read through their smudged edits. And then there's Smenkhkare, the Ghost King, a ruler who may have reigned briefly right after Akhenaten. Or was he also Nefertiti in disguise? Or Akhenaten's brother? Or, well, nobody knows. You trail your fingers across a reconstructed family tree, the kind drawn in dashed lines and speculative arrows. Names cross over, roles blur, the branches tangle and knot, like vines hiding the truth beneath them. Fringe theories blossom here like desert poppies after rain. Some suggest Nefertiti was murdered by rivals, jealous priests, even her own husband. Others claim she faked her death, hiding in plain sight under layers of ceremonial titles and godspeak. A few particularly spicy scrolls claim she ruled for a time, then was quietly removed when the religious tides turned against Atenism. And one theory, deeply romantic and possibly nonsense, says that she chose exile, that she walked into the desert willingly, with only a handful of loyal followers, and built a secret shrine to attend under the stars, far from power, far from politics. Just light, just silence, just rest. It's a lovely idea, and possibly a total myth. But that's the problem with Nefertiti. She exists at the edge of fact and fable, always shifting just out of reach. Like trying to catch sunlight with your bare hands. You pause beside a cracked wall fragment in a museum basement. Faded paint reveals a regal figure, tall, elegant, unmistakable. Nefertiti, maybe, or a goddess, or a royal daughter borrowing her mother's image. You squint. You want it to be her. So does everyone else. Because Nefertiti has become more than a person. She's a mirror. People project onto her what they want to see. Beauty, power, mystery, tragedy. She's Cleopatra without the scandals. Hatshepsut without the beard. A queen who may have outlived her era by vanishing into it. Tonight's quirky tidbit. In the early 1900s, a rumor swirled that a mummy labeled the Elder Lady was actually Nefertiti. The press went wild, until testing revealed she had arthritis and bad teeth, not quite the eternal beauty everyone imagined. People seemed disappointed. Even in death, Nefertiti couldn't be allowed to age. The irony is delicious. A woman erased from history is now overwritten by too many stories. You return to that famous bust, the one sculpted so reverently by Thutmose in his studio. Today, it sits behind glass in Berlin, eternally poised. Her eyes stare just past yours, serene and unreadable. And here's the kicker. The bust is unfinished. No pupils. Just blank, inlaid eyes that never got their final brushstroke. Why? Some say it was left incomplete to avoid making it too real. There were laws, after all, about creating perfect images of royalty. Others believe it was simply a work in progress when the city fell silent. But the most poetic theory? That even Thutmose, her sculptor, couldn't finish her. Because how do you capture someone who never stayed still? She is beautiful, yes, but she is also unknowable. And maybe that's what makes her so irresistible. You lean close to the glass, nose nearly fogging it, and whisper, "Where did you go?" She doesn't answer. Because queens don't explain themselves, especially not ones like Nefertiti. And so the debates rage on. through dig sites, in lecture halls, across online forums that smell like sandalwood and speculation. She may be under your feet, or hidden behind a painted wall, or waiting in a sealed chamber no radar has yet found. Or maybe, just maybe, she was never meant to be found, because maybe the power of a queen isn't in her tomb, but in the echo she leaves behind. You step out from the dust of theories and find yourself bathed in sterile fluorescent light, the kind that hums slightly and makes ancient things feel oddly modern. You're standing in a museum now. Cool air, polished floors, and glass cases that make even the most sacred artifacts feel like oddly expensive souvenirs. And there she is, Queen Nefertiti, or at least, the part of her we still possess. She floats in the center of the room, like a ghost frozen in time. Her famous bust displayed on a quiet pedestal in Berlin's Neues Museum. No crown jewels, no fanfare, just elegance carved from limestone and plaster, painted in hues that somehow still defy age. Her face, a study in symmetry. Her expression, still, amused, utterly untouchable. You walk around her slowly, knowing she isn't watching, but feeling watched anyway. Here's your historical gem for this stretch. The Nefertiti bust was discovered in 1912 by a German archaeological team led by Ludwig Borchardt. It was hidden away in a sculptor's workshop in Amarna, likely abandoned when the city fell into disuse after Akhenaten's death. Borchardt, upon seeing it, reportedly whispered, "We have a masterpiece." And just like that, the queen was reborn. But her new life hasn't been simple. The bust's presence in Germany has been a point of diplomatic strain. Egypt has asked for its return several times. Germany, of course, has declined, gently but firmly, saying the artifact was acquired legally under the practices of the time. And so, she sits, a guest that refuses to leave, a royal in exile. Museum goers shuffle by her quietly. Children point. Some adults stare for too long, forgetting to breathe. A few try to take selfies and are immediately shushed by the docents. Her face has launched coffee table books, inspired fashion lines, and even made cameos in pop music. Beyoncé has posed like her. Rihanna's worn her crown. She's basically the original influencer, 3,300 years later. But here's the twist. This bust may not be a finished product or even a royal commission. Some scholars argue that it's a model, a reference piece for apprentice sculptors to study, which would explain the lack of inlaid pupils and the lightweight plaster. It's like finding the Mona Lisa and discovering it was actually Da Vinci's rough draft. Historians still argue whether the bust was ever meant for public eyes, or whether we're all just gawking at ancient practice art. But if that's true, then practice never looked so perfect. And here's your fringe gem for the hour. Some conspiracy-minded Egyptophiles believe the real bust of Nefertiti is hidden in a secret archive or private collection, and the one on display is a replica. Too good to be real, they say. Too vivid. Too alive. Of course, that theory's about as solid as a sand dune, but it speaks to just how powerful this queen's presence is. People will invent anything to explain her pull. You drift through the museum, past other fragments of her time. A shattered relief with a hand raised to a ten's raise. A piece of jewelry with her cartouche barely visible. Even the absence of her mummy becomes an exhibit, discussed in hushed tones and documentary voiceovers. And yet, she dominates the space. Not through size or scale, but through aura. That whisper of power. The sensation that she knows something you don't. That she always did. You lean in, watching the way the soft gallery lights slide over her cheekbones. It almost feels disrespectful to stand this close, like you're eavesdropping on a goddess in her own thoughts. She looks right past you. Of course she does. Because what's royalty without mystery? The modern world has tried to make her smaller, to reduce her into a face, a trend, a decorative object. But she's not shrinking. If anything, she's expanding. Into memory, into culture, into legend. She's even in space now. Yes, NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft carried a stylized rendering of Nefertiti's bust on its mission to asteroid Bennu, a queen's likeness, orbiting 200 million miles from Earth. A symbol of beauty, endurance, and maybe, just maybe, humanity's weird obsession with things we can't quite explain. You walk back toward her one last time. She hasn't moved. She never will. But the world keeps circling her, like planets around a sun that refuses to fade. Her eyes, still pupilless, seem to pierce through centuries, through dynasties and distractions, through sandstorms, war zones, museum cases, YouTube thumbnails, and late-night whispers like this one. And they say, yes, I was real, and no, you'll never understand me completely. You exhale. Not because you're frustrated, but because, honestly, that's kind of the best part. The river, the temples, the mystery, the drama. And now, this. An unfinished sculpture that became one of history's most iconic faces. And still, she guards her final secret. Where did she go? What happened to her body? Did she die as a queen, as a pharaoh, or as a memory? Somewhere between stone and silence, and she knows, but she's not telling. Not yet. The desert night spreads like a soft blanket over the land you've come to know so well. The Nile's quiet hum fading into the distance. You stand at the edge of what once was the bustling city of Akhetaten, now just ruins kissed by moonlight and mystery. The cool breeze brushes against your skin as if carrying whispered secrets from the queen herself. You think back on all you've wandered through. Golden temples bathed in sunlight, secret chambers hidden beneath stone, whispered legends and stubborn facts tangled like papyrus scrolls. It's easy to get lost in it all, to chase after shadows and echoes that never quite settle. But maybe that's the point. Some stories don't have neat endings. Some queens don't leave tidy tombs or clear biographies. Some mysteries are meant to linger, like the scent of lotus flowers on a warm Egyptian morning. You imagine Nefertiti walking slowly along the banks of the Nile, her regal footsteps soft on the sand. She's tired but calm, wrapped in the light of a setting sun that turns the river gold. She smiles quietly, knowing that history will forever chase her story, but never fully catch it. And maybe that's the kind of immortality she wanted all along. You breathe in the cool night air, feeling the desert's timeless pulse beneath your feet. The stars shimmer overhead, countless and patient, watching over the land that cradled queens and gods alike. Your eyelids grow heavy, the gentle night weaving its lullaby around you. The world of kings and queens, temples and tombs, slowly fades into soft shadows. Remember, sometimes the best stories aren't about answers. They're about the questions we carry with us into sleep. So as you drift off tonight, let the mystery of Nefertiti wrap around you like a warm linen cloak, comforting and infinite. Good night, traveler. The Nile flows on, and so does her story.